Welcome back to episode 3 of Extend Explains Badly. Today, the PMD is going to finally get the dramatic spotlight that it deserves. And yes, there will be an emo musical interlude because this is my series and we respect the chaos. So let's panic, but like productively. Okay, welcome to the PMD tour. We are going to think about this as a concert. Maybe it is an all-day rock festival, maybe it's the disco, whatever music you are into, let's go there mentally. And we're going to go through all of the locations on our tour. In this case, they're called PMD properties. And I need to tell you that I'm not going to say PMD every time I'm going to say page. Just know PMD stands for page metadata. The PMD is the page is the PMD. I'm going to say page from here on out. So the first stop on our tour is the ID. This is easy. This is the name of your page. So if you have buttons in other pages that you want to route to this page, you just put that ID in those task routes for those buttons, and it'll bring you to whatever page is associated with this name ID. It is one of the two required properties in your PMD. So we've got ID and presentation, which is basically name in the body. We need the name in the body, right? That's it. So in this tutorial, I'm going to have screenshots of both visual mode and code mode. And if that confused you, then you probably skipped episode 1, which is fine. I'm guilty of doing this all the time, but you're probably not going to understand what we're looking at if you don't have an idea of what App Builder looks like. So stop here, go back to episode 1, and then come back to me and we can panic at the disco here later. Okay, so ID in visual mode, it looks like this, and you can click these 3 dots to delete it, rename it, whatever you need to do. Code mode, this is how it looks. You've got ID, and then you've got the name of your page, your ID. That one's easy. And then at the bottom of each of these, I'll have a link to the documentation. I'm not going to click into it or really talk more about this. Just know that you will have this available for you to dig deeper afterwards. So now we're moving down to security domains. And we're going to think of security domains like the bouncer at this page, right? So we are at a concert, we are at the disco, and this bouncer is only going to let certain people in and other people got to go. So we have our security domains that we configured as the model components, right? We talked about this in episode 1, and I said, hey, don't sleep on this enabled for page security box. Again, if this is confusing you, please go back to episode 1. So that enable for page security box must be clicked on your model component configured security domains. You can actually tie down which domains you want to have access to this page. So we have 2 domains, right? One has 3 roles, the other one has 2 roles. We want those 3 roles in the first security domain to be able to access this page. And this is how you would add them. So in code mode, it lives inside of these brackets and then double quotes. And if you're adding multiple, comma in between, and it directly associates with the security domains that you configured in your model components. That's how it looks in code mode. This is how it looks in visual. You would just go to the advanced tab and then you could use the drop down to select whatever security domains you want. All right. And then down we have include and script. And I just want you to know that these are interrelated. So include is basically how you can call your scripts from page configurations. So in episode 1, we talked about things that you could add in page configurations, and we've got scripts here. And scripts is where if you were going to use certain variables or functions across multiple pages, then you can just add them here under the page configuration scripts, and you would use include to call them into your specific PMD. So in this PMD, I do want to call this script, and this is how I would do it in code mode. It would live in the brackets, and then you would just do the name of the script dot script. And that's how it looks in code mode. And then in visual mode, you go to this tab that says scripts. And remember, like I said, they're sisters or brothers or brother, sister, whatever. They're friends. So we've got include and we've got script here. And include is a drop down in visual mode that you can select them, and it automatically already puts dot script there for you. So here I do have the two links. I have the about include, but also the second link here will show you how to actually access the data inside that script that you are calling on in this page. So include brings the script to the page, but when you're working through your widgets in the presentation, the body of the page, how do you call on those items from the script that you are including? I hope that made sense. I'm so sorry if it didn't. Moving down to scripts. So script is if you have these variables, these functions that are just for this one page only. So we're just going to throw it right into the PMD, and this is how we can do that. So in visual mode, you will go back to scripts. It's right under the include section. And I know this looks scary, but here is where you do need to learn a bit of the coding, and you can't just use, visual mode for really everything, because even in visual mode, you have to know how to do this scripting of your functions and your variables. So yeah, I don't mean to scare you, but definitely read through the documentation on PMD scripting and PMD functions, and that'll teach you all of the cool things you could do to manipulate your data and kind of get what you're looking for or what you need. So in visual mode, you would throw your code there. In code mode, it would live in, I call this percent notation. So if you hear me say percent notation, just know I made that name up. It's really like, I guess it's like a syntax, like a scripting syntax. So whenever you're doing any sort of scripting, you will need to put it inside of these percent notation thingies. That's what I call them. So this is how it looks in code mode. And then we've got the links. And now we have endpoints. So think about endpoints as how we bring data into our page. We want to call on specific data. We need to be able to access that data through an endpoint, which is like the addresses we talked about in episode 1. In AMD, you have that list of addresses called data providers. Okay, so in an endpoint, I can call on the name associated with the address that I need to bring that data into my page. So in visual mode, you would go to page load, because this is where we are entering the page, or the user comes into the page. And these are the endpoints, the data that we want to be able to access throughout the page. So visual mode under page load, and then code mode, it would look like this. In my AMD, I have that list of addresses, and the URL associated with any orchestrations for this app is listed under the name Workday Orchestrate. So in my endpoint, I'm just calling that name. And then in my URL, this is the specific orchestration that I'm wanting to use for this particular endpoint. Okay, and then we have on submit. So on submit is what do you want?
What do you want?
To
what do you want?
When your user clicks OK or submit, or maybe you've changed the name of that OK button to something else, but it's always the OK button, no matter how much you try to change it. So when your user hits OK, what do you want to happen? And it's just an extra way that you can sort of manipulate what happens when they are navigating away from an edit page. So here in code mode, I just said, hey, if there's any warnings thrown to my user throughout the page, you can still let them submit, like just ignore the warnings and let them move on about their day. And this is how it looks. It lives in the little percent notation thingies. And in visual mode, you'll just go to page submit, and it'll be at the bottom, you're on submit. And this is where you would throw your function. Okay, so I do want to talk about this link a bit. The list of event handlers, because on submit is just one of many event handlers. Event handlers are what things that are happening when your user takes an action on your page. So I'm going to talk about 3 of them in this episode, but there are plenty more. They all start with on, like on click, when a user clicks, on change, when a user makes a change to a value or a widget. What do you want? Do you want certain things to happen? Do you want to throw an error? Do you want to throw a warning? Do you want to change the value of another widget? These are all just like really cool things you can do with these event handlers. And then we have outbound data. So if endpoints are how we are bringing data into our page, outbound data is what we are doing with data collected on the page. So your user is filling out text fields, they're clicking options and drop downs, and we want to take that data, we want to take those values, and we want to put them somewhere. But what do we want to do with them? Do we want to house them inside of a business object? Do we want to carry them into the next page in the flow? Like, we are taking that data and we want to push it out of this PMD or page to somewhere else. what are we doing with it? We're putting it in the outbound data and we're picking the pieces of data from the page and telling them where we want them to go. So here in code mode, this is how it looks, and mine's a flow. And remember in episode 1, we talked about flows are defined in your AMD. So if you have 2 to 3 pages that you want to consecutively happen after the next, you would define that in your AMD. And since these are going to the score that I am trying to get, I want it to flow into the next page when the person hits OK so that they can see their score on the next page. So we're flowing it as a flow variable into the next page. And this is how it looks in visual mode, page submit, and outbound endpoints out of the page. Where are we going? Then we have onload. So onload is if you want to manipulate kind of what happens when your user arrives to the page. So they open the page. Is there anything specific you want to happen when they get there? So I do want to point out, even though it's written here, that onload will happen after all of the endpoint data is retrieved, but before loading any data into the widgets. In this example, I just did something where I had a bunch of different intros. Right, I had 4 different intros, and I'm calling from an orchestration to randomize what intro my user gets so that if they are opening this page multiple times, they'll get a different intro each time. And that's just what I want to happen for my user when they arrive to the page on load of the page. So that's how it looks in code mode. Again, the little percent notation syntax scripting thingy. And in visual mode, you'll go under page load. It makes sense that onload would live there, right? And then it's at the bottom. And then we have our last one, our presentation. So this is the second required property for your PMD. It's the body. So remember in school when you had to write papers, I'm sorry I had to bring that up. I won't stay on it too long, but you had like your introductory paragraph, your body, and then your conclusion paragraph. Well, your presentation has a header, a body, and a footer. And this is where all of the fun happens or the emotional breakdowns. Just know whatever pain points you arrive to while you're building out your presentation, it's okay. Have your little fit and then get over it and you'll figure it out and you'll succeed. Because I don't know if you're like me, but it happens like that every time. This is where the UI really comes to life. This is where we are adding in all of those widgets. All of the widgets contain the items that our users see. So these drop downs, these grids, these images, these videos, whatever widget you are using, it is living in this body, in this presentation. So this is how it looks in code mode. And have app preview open on the side so you can kind of see the changes that you're making as you're making them throughout. This is your meat and potatoes. This is how it looks in visual mode. If you are dragging and dropping items around, moving the placement of widgets, it makes more sense to just use visual mode for that. And so yeah, that was the PMD tour. We have survived the concert or the disco that we are at. We are fully hydrated and we are ready to jump into lesson 2 for the bonus tracks and a little app demo to see how it all sort of comes together. So I'll see you in lesson 2.
My baby don't mess around because she loves me so, and this I know for sure.
All right. Welcome to lesson 2, where we are going to cover some what I like to call bonus tracks, keeping in theme with this episode. But they're really just little like tips and tricks that developers taught me when I was starting my Extend journey that have helped me a lot through my development. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is these double question marks and single quotes. So this is called null handling, and null basically means empty or blank. And if you don't put null handlers on your like inbounds and outbounds, and the system is unable to find that piece of data. So like say here, it's not able to find the keyboard type descriptor, but you don't have the null handler, it's going to error out the whole page and you're going to have no idea what specific piece of data or code from your PMD errored out. So null handling will really easily show you, on your next page or in your logging, what came up blank, where was the issue at? Also, you don't want to throw errors at your users because some piece of data wasn't able to be found, because as we all know in our Workday tenants, that not all of our data is the best or the cleanest. So doing null handling will really help mediate, or it will really help minimize the amount of errors you are giving your users. Really shouldn't aim to give them any errors unless they're intentional. But so that is null handling. And down here we have this green line. It's a text, it's green. What does this mean? What's going on? This is commenting in your code. And to put comments in your code is an amazing practice because it tells future you what you're doing there, what you were thinking, what's going on. Or maybe if another developer is eventually going to have to pick up your code in this app, then they can see your comments throughout the code. And when you're commenting something out, then it's not an actionable piece of code. So it's not going to do anything other than just live there for your understandability. So there's two ways of commenting. Well, there's probably more, but I'll tell you about the two that I know. So you can do these two forward slashes that you see here to comment out one line. Or if you have like a whole paragraph of stuff that you want to comment out, then you can use this forward slash and then that asterisk. I call it the floating star. So you've got, the ability to comment out entire paragraphs using this way, or you can go back to just the double forward slash to comment out one line. I have so I have this like long function here on this other page. And if I didn't have my comments in there, I'd probably be like, what the heck is going on? If you want to know what is going on, I'm trying to calculate somebody's score based on what they hit in these drop downs. And so I threw it all into a function, but the comments help me separate out which drop down these values are coming from. So commenting is being kind to your future self. The next thing I wanted to talk about is that you probably already know this, because I'm realizing that some of the things I didn't know are basics for people who are more tech savvy. But I'm going to talk about it because it makes me happy that I know it now. So there are other keyboard shortcuts that you can use. And I did not know that Control Z and Control Y meant undo or redo. Like, hey, just kidding, I want that back there. So here, if you're like in App Builder and you're coding whatever, and you're asking somebody on Teams how their weekend was, but you're not actually writing it in Teams, you're writing it in App Builder, you could do Control Z to get rid of it. Or if you're like, just kidding, I do want that in then you can hit Control Y to bring it back. So that's just something fun to know if you didn't know it like I did. Another thing is, if you're really like particular about how all of your code lines up, like if this bothers you that this one is like, separated out into 3 lines and then this one is 2, you can right click and hit format document and it'll put it where it all needs to be. If you right click and hit format document and nothing happens, you might want to check your validate button to see if that there's something that you need to be aware of. Or you could possibly just be perfect and your stuff is already aligned perfectly. That is also possible. It's just never the case with me. So, okay, so let's talk about custom logging. So Workday Extend already gives you tons of amazing ways to track down your logs and audit what's going on with your app, but you can also add in custom logging. And this is what you see here with the console.info. So here I'm just saying, hey, I need to see what this outbound endpoint, what this data set looks like. So everything that lives in these curly brackets is considered itself, right? So give me all of the data from itself, from this outbound endpoint. And that's why I put self there instead of like naming it by whatever it's called. So I just said in my console, give me in JSON format, all of the data that lives within itself. And you'll be able to see any sort of custom logging that you have in your debug logs. And this helps you a lot with troubleshooting. Troubleshooting is the bane of my existence, but we learn a lot through it. So to show you kind of what that console.info did, so on my see results PMD or page, we have that info, and I said, give me all of the data for that outbound endpoint, and here is how it looks. And this will help you when you are troubleshooting things in Bruno or Postman, which are ways you can test your API calls. If API just scared you, go back to episode 1, why are you still here? Um, so yeah, definitely download Bruno or Postman. You'll figure out quickly which one you prefer. And this is how you can test your API calls. When you put these pieces of data in your custom logging, it's really easy to copy and paste them into your API testing programs. So yeah, that was it. Let's go into an app demo so we can kind of see how all of those PMD properties we talked about in lesson 1 really came together for that app. All right, so let's go. So this is like the same app that I was showing you in episode 1. We were doing the keyboard persona. And then for this episode, I just created another little section called Gauge Your Keyboard's Feelings. So, right, this is a hub page, and here we have page configuration cards. We're going to click into this card. We have a micro page. And during that onload, remember I said an onload is something I want to happen for my user when they arrive at the page. Remember I said I had a bunch of different intros and I was pulling from an orchestration endpoint to randomize those intros every time my user arrives to the page. So as you can see here, this one says your keyboard is observing you. If I close out and I go back into it, we've got a whole different intro in that onload. So now in our presentation, right, we have our title and we have this is a text widget for the intro that we're calling from the scripting in our onload. And then we have these drop down widgets. And then I changed my OK button to analyze keyboard mood, but it is still the OK button. So I'm going to take this little survey. How hard do I press my keys? I don't know. Let's do this. And then how often do I clean my keyboard? Probably not as much as I should. So we'll just click this one. Whoa, we get a alert or a warning. So if you're familiar with the native Workday experience, you know that this yellow orangey alert is a warning and red is an error. So here in an on change, what is an on change? It is another event handler, right? Just like on submit, just like on load. So on change is something you can put on each specific widget where if the user changes the value to something, you can have something happen. So here I decided that if somebody were to click that third option, then I want it to throw them a warning, an alert. So an on change is why we are seeing this alert. But remember in my on submit, I said, hey, if the page gives my user any warnings, let's just ignore those on submit and go forth with the next page in the flow. So my on submit, when they click this, is going to ignore that warning and allow the user to proceed. And here we have the results. So this is that score, that function that you saw in my script. This is the score that I was trying to pass into the next page through that outbound endpoint. And this is in this presentation of this page, we have, two text widgets, and one is showing that score and the other one is showing, what your keyboard, how it feels. So that is the gist of how all those PMD properties were working. And it's also the end of this episode. So I hope that you feel like you have a little bit more clarity with the PMD. If you don't, then my tutorials are probably not for you. But yeah, I had a lot of fun. I was looking forward to making this episode the most. So go forth, have a great life.